depths of human existence lies a force so fundamental, so pervasive, that it governs every breath we take, every desire we harbor, and every step we make toward what we believe will bring us fulfillment. Arthur Schopenhauer called this force the will, a blind, irrational drive that pushes all living beings toward survival, reproduction, and the endless pursuit of satisfaction. Yet paradoxically, this very force that animates life is also the source of our deepest suffering. To understand the human condition, we must first acknowledge this uncomfortable truth. We are not the rational masters of our destiny that we imagine ourselves to be. Instead, we are vessels for an unconscious will that operates beyond our immediate awareness, driving us toward goals that, once achieved, leave us empty and searching for the next conquest. This realization, while initially unsettling, opens the door to profound self-understanding and ultimately liberation. The pendulum of existence that Schopenhauer describes captures the essence of human experience with startling accuracy. When we lack something we desire, we experience the pain of wanting, the ache of incompleteness that gnaws at our very being. This pain motivates action, propels us forward, and gives our lives a sense of purpose and direction. We believe that if only we could attain that promotion, find that perfect relationship, acquire that material possession, or achieve that long-sought goal, we would finally be happy, finally complete. Yet what happens when we do achieve these desires? The initial rush of satisfaction quickly fades, replaced not by the lasting contentment we expected, but by a strange emptiness, what Schopenhauer identified as boredom. The goal that once seemed so important now appears hollow, and we find ourselves swinging back toward new desires, new sources of pain, new objects to pursue. This is the eternal dance of human existence, oscillating between the suffering of want and the suffering of having. This understanding invites us to examine our own lives with unprecedented honesty. How many times have we convinced ourselves that happiness lay just around the corner, in the next achievement, the next relationship, the next experience? How often have we found that corner only to discover another corner beyond it, and another beyond that? The blind will operates through us, creating desires that feel entirely our own, yet follow patterns as old as consciousness itself. The profound insight here is not that desire is inherently evil, or that we should abandon all goals and aspirations. Rather, it is that our relationship with desire determines whether we live as unconscious slaves to the will, or as conscious beings capable of transcending its blind dictates. The first step toward this transcendence is recognition, seeing the will for what it is, understanding how it operates through us, and recognizing the patterns it creates in our lives. When we observe our desires with detached awareness, something remarkable begins to happen. The urgency that typically accompanies wanting starts to diminish. We begin to see our desires not as absolute truths about what we need to be happy, but as temporary movements of consciousness, waves that rise and fall in the ocean of awareness. This doesn't eliminate desire, but it changes our relationship to it fundamentally. Consider the nature of suffering itself. Physical pain, while unpleasant, is often bearable and temporary, but psychological suffering, the kind that dominates human experience, is almost always related to time. We suffer because we remember a past we cannot change or anticipate a future we cannot control. We suffer because we compare our current state to an imagined ideal. We suffer because we resist what is, always grasping for what might be. The blind will feeds on this temporal dimension of consciousness. It creates narratives about who we should become, what we should achieve, how others should treat us, and how the world should conform to our expectations. These narratives, while they can motivate positive action, also create the conditions for perpetual dissatisfaction. The will is never satisfied because satisfaction is antithetical to its nature. It exists to want, to strive, to never be content. Yet within this seemingly bleak assessment of the human condition lies the seed of profound transformation. For when we truly understand the nature of the will, when we see through its machinations with clarity, we discover something extraordinary. We are not identical to the will. There is something in us that can observe the will, that can step back from its blind urgency and see it with compassion and understanding. This observer, this awareness that can witness the movement of desire without being swept away by it, represents our deepest nature. It is the part of us that remains calm in the storm of wanting, that finds peace not in the satisfaction of desire, but in the recognition of our essential completeness independent of external circumstances. This awareness doesn't eliminate the human experience of wanting and achieving, but it provides a stable ground from which to engage with these experiences without being overwhelmed by them. The cultivation of this witnessing awareness is perhaps the most important work we can undertake as human beings. It begins with simple observation, noticing our desires as they arise, watching the stories our minds tell about what we need to be happy, observing the cycle of wanting, getting, and wanting again. This observation should be gentle, without judgment, or the desire to immediately change what we see. The goal is not to suppress the will, but to understand it so thoroughly that we are no longer unconsciously controlled by it. As this understanding deepens, we begin to discover sources of satisfaction that are independent of external achievement. We find that contentment can arise spontaneously when we are fully present with what is, rather than constantly grasping for what might be. We discover that the love, peace, and fulfillment we seek in relationships, achievements, and experiences are actually qualities of our own awareness, available in any moment when we cease the restless pursuit of elsewhere. This doesn't mean we become passive or cease to engage with life meaningfully. On the contrary, when we are no longer driven by the blind will, our actions can arise from a deeper source, from wisdom, compassion, and genuine love rather than from compulsion and need. We can pursue goals and engage in relationships from a place of freedom rather than dependency, giving our lives both greater effectiveness and deeper meaning. The recognition of the will's blindness also cultivates profound compassion for others. When we see how unconsciously we have been driven by forces beyond our immediate control, we develop empathy for the countless ways others are similarly driven. The person who cuts us off in traffic, the colleague who seems perpetually dissatisfied, the family member who can never seem content, all are expressions of the same blind will that operates through us. This understanding dissolves the artificial boundaries between self and other, revealing our fundamental interconnectedness in both suffering and potential liberation. Moreover, this perspective offers a radically different approach to life's inevitable challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles as evidence of life's unfairness or as impediments to our happiness, we can understand them as opportunities to deepen our awareness, to practice non-attachment, and to discover the unshakable peace that exists beneath the surface turbulence of experience. Pain becomes a teacher rather than an enemy, and even boredom reveals itself as a doorway to presence when we cease trying to escape from it. The path toward understanding and transcending the blind will is not a destination we arrive at once and for all. It is an ongoing practice of awakening to each moment, of choosing awareness over unconsciousness, of selecting freedom over compulsion. Some moments we will be caught by the will's blind drive, swept up in its urgent demands and apparent necessities. Other moments we will rest in the spaciousness of pure awareness, finding contentment in simply being alive, simply breathing, simply witnessing the miracle of existence. The beauty of this understanding is that it is immediately practical. We don't need to retreat from the world or abandon our responsibilities to begin living from this deeper recognition. We can engage fully with our work, relationships, and creative pursuits, while maintaining the inner freedom that comes from not being identified with the outcomes of our efforts. We can care deeply about our lives and the lives of others while remaining unattached to specific results. In the end, the blind will that Schopenhauer identified as the root of suffering becomes a doorway to awakening when seen clearly. The very force that creates our pain also provides the energy for our liberation. The desires that seem to trap us in cycles of dissatisfaction become the raw material for developing wisdom and compassion. The pendulum between pain and boredom becomes a dance of consciousness, each swing an opportunity to practice presence, to choose awareness, and to discover the profound peace that exists at the center of all experience. This is the paradox and the promise of human existence. Within the very structure of our suffering lies the key to our freedom. When we stop fighting the will and start understanding it, when we cease being unconscious victims of its demands and become conscious witnesses to its operations, we discover that we have always been free. The prison was only our identification with the prisoner. The suffering was only our belief that we were the sufferer. The invitation before us is simple yet profound: to wake up to the nature of our own experience, to see through the blind will's apparent urgency, and to discover the unshakable contentment that is our birthright. This is not a philosophical concept to be understood intellectually, but a lived reality to be embodied moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. The pendulum will continue to swing, but we need no longer be at its mercy. We can find our center and remain there, watching with compassion and understanding as life unfolds in all its complexity and beauty around us. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out the other recommended videos here beside. They are a continuation of this journey of self-discovery and reflection. Subscribe for more content that will awaken your inner potential.